What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm Ryan Thomas, your host. Once again, bringing you another edition of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. And guess what, people? We are moving fast on this board. 32 picks in 32 days. We move on from the 7th overall selection. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers picked 7th. I laid out who I believe they should take with the 7th overall pick. Now we're moving on to the Chicago Bears and who I believe they should take with the 8th overall pick. The Bears really have impressed me, to be quite honest with you, and I want to preface my statement by saying that they've impressed me for somewhat of, some people would say, the wrong reasons. Obviously, the Bears have been a bad team these past few years, but lately I'm impressed. I am impressed by their performance. And what I mean by that is they took a huge chance last year in the draft on Mitch Trubisky. Huge chance. Mitch Trubisky only played 1 year of college, started only 1 year at the University of North Carolina. They moved up from 3rd overall to 2nd overall with the Niners and took Mitchell Trubisky. And many people, myself included, were shocked that they did that. Just shocked. Didn't anticipate that. Didn't see that coming. Didn't think that they needed necessarily to make that move, to move up one spot with a team that honestly wasn't even going to take Trubisky. So it was a little weird. And while on the surface of it, the way I just laid that out, it probably wasn't a good move when they could have just picked Trubisky at 3rd overall anyway. But I will say there is something to be said for having what is called conviction to go get your guy, and that's what they did. Whether it was the right move, nuts and bolts move of it was right, that's another story, but I actually really like Mitch Trubisky. I liked a lot of things that I saw from Mitch Trubisky, and in the limited time that he played, I thought, he probably should have started early on. Really, just throw him out there, let him learn, let him play, let him suffer through the ups, let him suffer through the downs, let him succeed through the ups. So I think that's definitely what they're going to do moving into 2018. There's really no reason for them not to. Realistically, there's a lot of positions of need on this team, and John Fox, the now former head coach of the Chicago Bears, was definitely seen as a guy that was somewhat as the scapegoat by the Chicago Bears fan base, but I do believe that they hired a coach in Matt Nagy that fits what they actually need. Similar to, I harken back to a couple years ago where the Philadelphia Eagles hired Doug Peterson. And Doug Peterson said, well, we got to go out and get our guy. It kind of happened the opposite way for the Chicago Bears. They got the quarterback first, and then they got their coach. So the Eagles got their coach, and then they got their quarterback. It's going to be very interesting to see how this works with the Bears. They get their quarterback, they get their coach. It's going to be interesting. They matched a coach to a quarterback, and I'm intrigued on how that's actually going to pan out. There's a lot of positions of need. The one area of focus for me is that on the surface of things with the Bears, they're going to look to make Mitch Trubisky better. What I mean by that is surround him with as much talent as possible, allow him to have a solid running game, improve the offensive line, make moves that will definitely help Trubisky grow. And all those ideas are fantastic. All of those ideas make sense. It makes sense for the logic to be, well, they really need a wide receiver when Tariq Cohen was their leading wide receiver, who's a running back. They need wide receivers. They need a lot of players. And most of these teams that are featured in the top 8, the Chicago Bears, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Indianapolis Colts, the Cleveland Browns, the New York Giants, they have a lot of needs, these teams. And oftentimes, if this was a regular draft, and I'm not looking at this in a mock-like style, I would say that the Chicago Bears need to trade down. They need to look to get more picks. That's what I would try to do. But in terms of getting a top 8 talent in this draft, someone that could come in and really shake things up, talent-wise. You got to reinvigorate, and I want to say this slowly and carefully. You have to reinvigorate the Chicago Bears, the identity of the Chicago Bears. And what is the identity of the Chicago Bears? It is their defense. In the last few years, their defense has been terrible. Just a flat-out joke. And they have one guy going into the Canton Pro Football Hall of Fame, Brian Urlacher, who was a fantastic linebacker, one of my favorite players of the last 15 years, and a guy that I really think deserves to be in Canton. Fantastic player. And his tenure with the Bears, his career ended kind of awkwardly, but I'm happy for him that he's getting back on his feet in Canton and he's getting the bust and everything like that. I hope it's a bald bust, not one where he's got the just for men, hair plugs. Not to throw an insult Urlacher's way, but, I liked him better bald. He just looked awesome. So looked more intimidating than he does now. But that's neither here nor there. Back to the 32 bigs in 32 days. So Chicago needs to reinvigorate that defense, and I got 2 players off the board so far within the first 7 picks that are defensive players. The other ones obviously on offense, running back, quarterback, offensive lineman. Chicago, I think, would be fools if they passed on this player. And the player I'm referring to is Tremaine Edmonds from the University of Virginia Tech. I love this player. I think he's going to be a stud. I think he's going to really wow a lot of people. He's 20, going to be 21 by the time I think the season starts. And he's just a flat-out stud. And I think that you look at taking Mitch Trubisky last year, they got their cornerstone player on offense. Now they can look to get their cornerstone player on defense. And although they have spent a wealth of picks on, the defense, they're not Tremaine Edmonds. They're just not. They're not Tremaine Edmonds. And the way I look at it is, he's played in 3 bowl games. He's 19. Excuse me, I meant to say 19. I think I said 20. He's 19 years old. By May 2nd, he'll be 20 years old. 6'5", 250 pounds. He was a finalist for the Butkus Award after recording 108 tackles and 5.5 sacks. He decided to forego his senior year and enter the draft. Finished his career with 213 tackles, 10 sacks, and 1 interception. He's got some brothers in the NFL. Trey plays in the NFL. Terrell, also a prospect in the 2018 NFL Draft, both played at Virginia Tech. Farrell Edmonds also played in the NFL, his father. This guy's got a bloodline of football. Tell me how many players in this draft are 6'5", 253 pounds, and run a 4.5, 4.40. Not many, I can tell you that. So this guy is the real deal. The question is, where does he line up? Does he line up at outside linebacker? Does he line up at middle linebacker? I don't care. I don't care the question about where they're going to put him. You get them. You get the best players possible based on their talent level. And I've said this a bunch of times throughout this segment, but if I have a need, I'm not going into a draft looking for just that one position. I'm looking to get the best players available at all times. And the clock is ticking for Chicago because last time they made the playoffs was 2010. They've had coaching changes. They've won Super Bowl, obviously, in 85. But they've had coaching changes. Dick Duran, Lovie Smith, John Fox, now Matt Nagy, who I do like. I rated the hire as an A-plus hire on my grading on myfantasysportstalk.com. I like the hire. I think it's a decent move. But they need to get better. They need to bring back their identity. And right now, their identity is slowly but surely returning. But it's a shame that they have kind of taken the course that they have as a franchise. I would say it's been a shame because they have diehard fans, a diehard sports city. they need to bring it back. They need to bring it back. And I think that they will. Matt Nagy, obviously offensive coordinator last year for the Kansas City Chiefs. We're going to see, I think, some similarities to the offense that they had with Kansas City and Alex Smith last year. It's great. The Matt Nagy hire is a great hire for, in terms of Jordan Howard's value, for like a fantasy purpose or anything like that. Jordan Howard's value is going to be huge. He's going to make things happen. They're going to look to get him the ball. They're going to look to get Tarek Cohen the ball. But I would say, yes, wide receiver is a huge area of need for the Chicago Bears, but that doesn't mean that you take a wide receiver 8th overall. That's very high. They could easily get a wide receiver or 2 in the 2nd or 3rd round. Tremaine Edmonds is a monster, and that's a guy that you don't scoff at. He's the type of player that an offense has to game plan how to beat him. And that is something that, just that simple idea, I think gets lost on a lot of coaches and GMs and even just football fans. Get as many guys as possible that can make your team one that you have to game plan for. Whether it's because he's faster on the edge, whether it's because he's good in coverage, or both in the case of Edmonds. I really like this pick. I think it's one that would greatly improve their team, and I think that they picked the right quarterback. I'm not thinking that he's going to do 38 touchdowns and 5 interceptions numbers, but I think with the coaching hire, it fits what they want to do with Mitch Trubisky. And defensively, they got to get better. You get a cornerstone on offense last year, you get a cornerstone on defense this year, and just pray that Aaron Rodgers retires. You got a tough division there. You got Kirk Cousins in the division now. You got to get some guys that can go after him. Tremaine Edmonds is a guy that I really like. So Chicago's got Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. They got, the Lions with Stafford, Matt Patricia. The new head coach there, which I thought was We'll get to that a little bit later. And then you got the Green Bay Packers, who they're one Aaron Rodgers injury away from being a terrible team. So are they that great? They got Jimmy Graham. We'll see how that pans out. Their defense is still Green Bay's defense. But overall, I like what they're doing. I like what they're angling towards, and I hope that they get better because they got great fans, very diehard fans in Chicago, and fans that I think definitely want to see them turn it around in the Bears way. Where they're actually able to build up that defense, get better. Raquan Smith would be a guy I'd be looking at as well. Vita Vea, those are some other guys out there that I would be looking at. But for the sake of this pick, I think the best linebacker in the draft is Tremaine Edmonds. And I think that the idea of taking a 20-year-old linebacker or a 19-year-old linebacker on draft day, 8th overall, is not a bad proposition. I'm Ryan Thomas. It was the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, 32 picks in 32 days. Just wrapped up the 8th overall pick with the Chicago Bears. Onward and upward, we go to San Francisco to talk about the Niners, who I believe they should pick 9th overall. We'll be right back.